Here we have a Blackstar HT Club 40. This is an amp that lots of people buy because it promises so much at such a low price point. And it is the amp which techs either hate with a passion or have not worked on. Let me show you a few of the things to watch out for in this series. The owner reported that it powers on but makes no sound. And indeed, it had a blown HT fuse. I put a new 500 milliamp slow blow in. And I'm powering it up on the current limiter. Oh, and we have a great big powerful glow on that current limiter. That's with the amp in standby. If I did not have that current limiter on, we would not have gotten that far to have that hum. We would have had a terrible, terrible blown fuse. Just keep feeding it fuses, and then someone would eventually get tired of putting in a half amp fuse and would have put in like a 3 amp fuse, and then something would have caught on fire. Now the center pin of that EL34 broke off. I suspect that EL34 has had some things happen to it. They're a pair of JJs, which doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. But, oh, I see. Hopefully you can see this. This is the octal socket here, and there's a notch in it there. And there's a corresponding notch in the tube base. Let's see if I can get that to show. And those have to line up. But on this tube, that little notch is not here, it's here. Someone put it in sideways. So all the tube pins are off by 1. That explains a lot. You got some new JJ EL, they're actually not new, they're my shop test pair of JJ EL34s in, with the locator pin correct on both. And this pin lost its locator. There's no real shock there. Thing was abused. And it's not necessarily the owner's fault. These white ceramic sockets make it very easy to misalign tubes because they're a little bit oversized in the middle. And that locator pin will still go in that hole even if it's not oriented correctly. So let me put this back on the tripod. Okay. Power it back up with a new to the amp pair of EL34s in. And let's wait to see if anything goes haywire. Still got the current limiter on. Everything seems copacetic. I want to show you something about the Blackstars. It's not all the models, but the HT series does it. The amp is now on standby. This tells most techs that there's no voltage present. I'm going to measure DC voltage at pin 3, the plate. 394.5 volts. At the screen, 392.5. At the grid, negative 72.3. The standby in this amp is not a standby in the traditional sense. It shunts off the preamp section. So I'm going to take the amp out of standby now. No current draw. But I want to show you the next thing that gets techs on these things. Let me turn off the current limiter and get my guitar cable ready. Alright, so there's nothing plugged into the amp, and the amp is out of standby. The plate is 407.2, the screen is 405.2, and the grid is negative 74.7. If I try to play the amp right now, I have almost no output. If I plug into the input jack, that bias voltage goes from negative 72 to negative 29.3 on that side, negative 29.3 on that side, so that the bias trim pots are set pretty evenly. Let me bias this real quick. 29.5. Now this drops to 373 because it's actually drawing current. And now I can confirm that the bias is set with this new pair of tubes. 54% idle dissipation on this tube, 52% idle on that dissipation on that tube. That's really good. That's pretty typical for a very high gain amp, which has got 6L6s. The output stays clean. All the distortion comes from the preamp. I'm going to get a new pair of EL34s in this thing because the 6L6s I have, I'm sorry, I said 6L6s, the 34s. The JJs in there now are just my test pair, as I said, and let's make sure both channels are working. So it sounds like a Blackstar. Alright, I think this amp's going to be fine. Just need to get a new pair of 34s in there and rebias it for make sure they're good too. Watch your pin orientation on these things. Yeah, it's just a fun fact of life with those white ceramic output sockets. And as far as techs hating these and people buying them like hotcakes, there's a whole lot of free lunch promised in here. A whole lot of free lunch.